All right, take one in the new podcast studio. Chris Bowers, how's it going, dude?
Doing good.
Awesome. Hey guys, welcome back to the Kevin and Fred show. We are coming at you live, kind of, from the new podcast studio without a camera set up yet. So we're gonna keep improving. But anyways, my buddy Chris and I today decided we were recording a podcast one way or the other. So I'm gonna let you guys look at him because he's way more good looking than I am, a lot younger and smarter. So I figured we'll have the camera on him. Chris, how's it going, dude?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm glad to do this. So, why don't we start off here? Tell the listeners a little bit about you. Like, you're here in Phoenix, Arizona, or the greater Phoenix metro area. Tell us a little bit about your business, and then I'm going to kind of hop around like how you got into real estate and stuff like that.
So business this year, we're at about 140 units closed. 70 of those units are personally like my production.
Whoa.
And then 70 of the other units are through like four of our main agents. So mine's through my 70 are almost all referrals.
Okay.
So thankfully. And then the 70 units that my team does is through like our Zillow Flex account that we have, and then just like Google pay per click.
Okay. So let's do this for a little more context. I like that you did that. What was that like a year ago? So what would you just finish last year with?
Yeah, last year was I think like 78, 80.
Wow. Okay. So you close to not quite doubling, but really close to doubling this year. Okay.
We
And
almost got like forced into the team. I remember like listening to Russell Shaw one time, and he was like, there's people that like say they want to have a big team, and there's like, and then he was saying how I only want my team to be big enough to handle the amount of work that I have at the time to give the best customer service.
yeah,
And I was like, game changer. So it was about a year and a half ago with the Zillow Flex account where
that
I
was
was
the
like,
thing.
whoa, like this isn't manageable with just like me and my wife. It's like that's when we knew we had to do this through like other people. So it was kind of like forced upon us in a great way.
Yeah.
And we
That
just went with it.
that's the best way to grow deep and grow because you have to, not because you're a lot of I think one of the bigger mistakes I see is people grow as a way of growing. Like growing is the strategy for
Mhm.
growing, if that makes sense. And it can be done. It's just really expensive to do it that way
Right.
and has a super high failure rate. So how long have you been in real estate? Let's go back to that for a second.
So 16 years. So I think around like
Wow.
2005,
Bro, you
2000.
look like you're 22. So you got licensed at the age of 6.
Yes. Yep. 22, got licensed. I think I took the test like 5 or 6 times.
No kidding.
Yeah, it
What
was.
okay, at 22, like there's so much to unpack here. That's pretty young for somebody to get into real estate. Like for a lot of people, I know I got licensed at 29. The average agent in America is still probably like in the mid 50s.
Yeah.
So like at 22 is real young. It's usually at least a second career, if
Mhm.
not a third. But 22, that's for you. I know it wasn't your first career, but it
Right.
was. So what was it? What makes a 22-year-old go, I'm gonna get into real estate?
So I remember asking my mom around 22, like like what can I do to go make a decent amount of money? I wasn't going to go to college. Like I'm terrible student, like CD in school. Um, and I said, hey, what can I do to go make some money? And she's like, be a UPS driver or a realtor. I have no idea like how those two even connect. But my driving record wouldn't allow me to go anywhere with like UPS. So I was like, I'm not going to be able to be a driver with my driving record. So I took the test like 6 times for real estate, and that's like how I got started. But I've always like been like an entrepreneur by nature, just like as you know, like
Yeah.
I used to own the skate shop when I was 16 years old. And so like I started working at 14 at Chick-fil-A. I actually walked around Metro Center in like the chicken costume. I'd get a quarter more if I walked around Metro in the chicken costume. So at 14, I started doing that. Then I started the skate shop at 16. My parents gave me money. Then at 22, got into real estate.
Awesome. And so at 22, you got into real estate. So you mentioned that your wife works with you as well.
Mhm.
At what point did she join your real estate business?
You know, like behind the scenes, I mean, forever. I mean, we've been together for like 15, 16 years. Like behind the scenes, always doing like spreadsheets and things like that
Gotcha.
that I don't understand, but not like as an agent. I think she got licensed like less than 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. So
So like
that's
she was
real
still like
soon.
running behind the scenes some of it. Like she still had a job doing behind the scenes, and then helping me build some stuff. And then about 2 years ago, she came on board. And like that's what she's been doing for us now. Like she actually manages the team. I do like personal production and stay super busy with that. She manages the team and that's her like gig.
That's her gig, and
Yep.
she loves it, right?
She does. Yeah, she's got that like she's like a just like a teacher at heart.
Oh yeah.
And so the team's all her. I'm
That
just like a driver and get it done. So like I'm not good in that area.
no, so it's no to me, no surprise then to hear that really like the growth. I know it was the opportunity like through Zillow Flex,
Mhm.
but it's no real surprise to me that like her presence in the team and the business, coincides with you guys going, hey, we can take this bigger because you've got a certain skill set that quite frankly you've learned how to maximize. And I want to talk about that a little bit more too. And she's got a different skill set that allows you guys to kind of bring those two things together to build a business beyond just what Chris can do.
Yeah.
Because dude, 70 houses, like let's just unpack that for a second. So you're gonna do 70 units personally. Chris is this year.
Hmm.
Okay. Is that what did you do last year personally?
Probably 48 of them.
Okay, so that's a lot too.
Hmm.
So you're selling a lot of real estate personally.
Hmm.
How does somebody how do you sell 70 houses by yourself in a year?
I think one is we don't have any kids. So I have to like, that is a huge deal. Like if I
Okay.
had, kids, I don't think we'd been able to grow the way we did it. So not having kids and just, you know, I mean, really, that's probably the biggest thing. And then from there, it's just, I
Well,
mean,
that's the thing that gives you the
it
time.
gives me the time and then the schedule. Like I just never really minded. Um, I'm very good at consultations and getting to the bottom of things with my clients.
Okay.
So like the whole look around for like 5 months just isn't where it's at with me. I mean, even when the
Yeah.
market was hard, it's getting a little bit easier, but even when there was 10 and 15 offers, I was always willing to like have the conversation with my clients and tell them like, this is what we have to do to get this. And you either participate in the market or don't participate in the market. Neither's fair. Like, I don't need you to buy or sell a house, but if you want to, like, I can get you one. So I think just having like direct conversations with clients and not having, you know, 15 or 20 at a time. But as you ask me now, and I'm thinking about it, I don't know how to truly explain it. It's a, it's a busy schedule. But it's just been manageable.
Yeah. So let's break that down, dude. Like what does your average like day or week look like Chris's schedule specifically?
I would like to do the whole like it's all structured. It's a mess. Uh,
Is it okay? So is it a mess from beginning to end of the day every day?
when I say mess, I should probably clear that up. Like I have like this whole time blocked. Like literally, if I showed you my calendar right now on my phone, like I have it blocked off every hour, and it would be the biggest lie if I told you that that hardly ever got like I just don't keep like it just doesn't happen. I'm like the gym's here and lead generation's here and this is here, and I'm like it's a mess. So really, I mean, it's just wake up. I've always got some buyers that I'm helping. I just look in their portals, see what houses we need to go look at, call them, go look at the houses. So last year, I should back that up. So last year I did do like a showing partner, or not showing partners, like showing agents.
Okay.
So like I had agents, like if somebody, I live in North Peoria, if like I had a client in Mesa, I already had like two or three like agents that work for my brokerage, not on my team, that like live over there.
Okay.
And I'd be like, okay, cool. So they had a time card. Like I would text them, be like, hey, who can show this house tonight? They would show it, fill out a time card, text it to me. I knew they were done when they text me that time card. So then I knew to follow up with my client and ask them questions. Then from there, they would turn the time card into my office. They had to email it that night. And then on Fridays, we cut checks.
Oh wow.
So like that's how it went last year was, so I didn't have to, and there's certain
You
clients.
kind of had like an on-demand team.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, and people were totally fine with it. Like it was in my head thinking that like, no one's going to want to go with whoever.
Right.
And I think if I set the expectations up clearly in our buyer consultation is like,
Yeah.
I'm not the master of opening up like doors. Like that's not my skill set.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that I did that's like, that's what I'm like the best at opening that door for you. So I would let them know like, hey, the goal, and especially last year, the goal is we got to get in as quickly as possible. Like I already have a like full schedule. And so what's going to happen is when you want to look at a home, just like text me and I'll get an agent out there as quickly as possible to show you the home. And then I'm going to follow up with you when you're done looking at the house. And then that was like my motto last year. And so and there were still times and places where I would step in. Like I didn't just like have, like I would go, especially if it was like a great client of mine. like I'd still drive out there every once in a while and show them how house just to like stay connected.
Right.
But like it wasn't like natural, like in my brain, like when they would text me a house, say, hey, I want to see this, like I would shoot out a group text. Someone would text back, say they wanted to show it.
Look,
And I think what I realized through that, if anybody wants to try to do it, is especially with like our area, Maricopa,
yeah.
like we service Maricopa. That's a big area.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so for the listeners that aren't here in the Phoenix area or aren't familiar with it, like it's really spread out.
Hmm.
Where Chris lives is, north and west of where we happen to be sitting today in Tempe. And like where Mesa is and some of the places he's referring to is east and even southeast of here. So like, and it's a really big radius, and a lot of agents in our marketplace, like we do that. We go everywhere.
Hmm.
Like we have to, I think, to service because there's so much competition here.
And it's interesting because it's just mindset. Cause I would think like if I was in like, I mean, obviously, when someone says I want to buy in Prescott, like really far north, I don't say like I'm going to help you. I think like in California or some other states, like I think people are very specific on like these are my
I
areas.
know agents that work in a mile, like
Yeah.
literally in a radius 1 mile.
So I think like we've just gotten so used to like Maricopa being like, I don't know how many cities, but it's a huge area like that we just work it. And most realtors do.
Yeah.
And so what I found to be the trick in that is find agents that like that showing is in their backyard. And if
Yeah.
they're just walking across the street for
It's
$50,
easy.
gold. Um, the second you're trying to get an agent to drive 40 miles for you for $50, it's not going to work. So like if you think that through like systematically, I knew like, hey, I'm going to go close this many homes and they're going to be all over the map. So like solve your challenge before you're in it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I need a few agents like in Buckeye, Avondale, Goodyear. I need a few agents north. I need a few agents in like Scottsdale. And you just find those agents, they don't have to be on your team. And then I think if you just figure out the system for it, like they knew.
Did you know, or you're like, hey, I'm just gonna pay him $50 or X amount of dollars per hour and just see if it works?
Yeah. And
Okay.
that's just like that's just the way I solve any problem is like
Test it.
like put a system together, test it, and then go back, just go back and figure it out. Like if I was paying like $5,000 for these people to show houses, I'd have been like, this isn't gonna work. But you found out it was like probably 250 to $300 to put somebody under contract. And I'm like, that's all day. Like, and then
Yeah.
people want to have the conversation of like, well, it's costing you money. I'm like, if you really keep track like gas and tires and oil and time,
In
the
time.
most important
The
one. But
most
like if you
valuable.
just still wanted to just go super like spreadsheety on like gas, time, oil, like there's so many reasons why not to go do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big believer too. If you're gonna go spreadsheety, you should know your dollar per hour wage and also include that. But yeah, to your point, people think like, hey, I'm giving something up. So I want to go two places here. First, I want to go. Let's say it was 5 years ago, dude. Let's say you and I were having the same exact conversation, but it was 5 years ago.
Mhm.
What would your what would you be telling me your business looks like 5 years ago if we were having this conversation then?
5 years ago, I was doing 35, 40 referrals a year and
Just straight referrals.
straight referrals. Like, yeah, like it was, and it still is like our sweet spot. So like
Right.
all this other, like the Zillow Flex program, the pay-per-click, I look at it on a spreadsheet, like an ROI
Yeah.
situation, but like my core, like I probably got 90 referrals this year
Okay.
and 70 of them closed. And those are just straight up like text messages to me. I get a text like every like 3 or 4 days from a past client that says, and it's the same scenario. And we've got scripts for it and you have to, or it won't work. And so it's, hey, I gave your number to my niece. If she calls you, here's her name. And it's like that. And I say, thank you so much for thinking of me. It's people like you that keep me in business. And I'll always remember that. Then give it 5 minutes, text them back and say, hey, they're probably not going to reach out. I've been doing this for 16 years and know people don't naturally like to have that introduction conversation. So can you pass over the number and I'll just text them right now and let them know who I am so they feel like comfortable. And 99% of the time,
Yeah.
that's when the number comes. So like if we just said like, hey, thank you, like that wouldn't work. It would be like, thank you so much for referring us to business. We'd never get the number. So we've learned how to communicate with people in a way where it's like, first, thank you for thinking of me. You keep us in business. We'll always remember that. And then it's 5 minutes later, like, hey, this is what you can do. And they do it. Some people will say, like, hey, let me ask for permission. And I have an app on my phone, just a Google form. So anytime someone texts me, I'm sure this, like, we get 1,000 texts a day.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm forgetting stuff. So when a lead comes in, I have a Google form and it's straight up like name, who referred me the business, who the referral is. And Even if someone's like, hey, my neighbor, and they don't give me a name, I still put like the person who referred me, and then I'll put like the person's name, that the client, I'll put like neighbor. Like I don't even know their name.
Until it's time
Then
to
I
change it.
push, yeah, and then I push submit on my phone. So I know like that's the most important part of my day. Like is all the texts that I get, like that's what I do and stop.
You're protecting that. Like you get a new lead. That's, it's funny. We have that conversation a lot too, is because Fred and I also receive a lot of referrals via text message
Mhm.
or Facebook message or
Right.
whatever, right? Um, and that's the number one thing
Yeah.
is, okay, cool. Before we act, let's make sure this gets recorded into the, for us, the,
Mhm.
the database or wherever. So that way we have something to go back to. We've always been really big. And that's key. Like you got to be able to do that.
And that's where when we when I fill out that form, it goes on the spreadsheet, right? Because it's Google form. And then my assistant, like every morning, we start off, we have a cadence to our meetings every morning. And so my assistant, the first thing we do is look at that lead spreadsheet. And
Oh,
so it's kind of cool because like she's built in accountability. Because like if I go 3 or 4 days and she's like, hey, we're like you haven't got any leads lately. And then on that form, once it goes into our CRM, then we highlight it yellow. So we just have a system of like, hey, I
that's
know I've
cool.
got to stop, put that lead in the system. It goes to a spreadsheet. Then I know, and sometimes I'm not putting these people in like a CRM for 5 and 6 days. I don't want to act like it's a perfect system, but like that's our checks and balances. So like when I look at the spreadsheet, I know like, okay, it's highlighted yellow. That means it's went into the CRM. There's a scheduled follow up. And then it's just nice to have a spreadsheet where you look at it. And at the end of the year, you're just like, these are like the 10 people that refer me like 90% of the business. Like we should probably,
Yeah.
you know, figure out how to handle this properly and make sure we're telling them like thank you so much for like actually keeping us in business because like that's if we went back 5 years ago that's the only way we got business. I haven't called a client. I've probably went through, you remember like Bold at Keller Williams,
Yeah.
and they would say like go into the hallway
Yeah.
and god, my heart would
Me too.
I would go out there and just put on, I mean I would literally would talk to people. There was no one on the phone, just so I look like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, but I'd just be having a conversation with nobody just to fit in for the hour. And
Wow.
I'm like, my clients, like that just wouldn't work. Like I'm just not that person. They know it. Like I would be so not representing me fairly
Right.
to like do that. So like I just want to let people know that in 16 years I've probably went through one round of ever strategically like picking up the phone and calling people. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean we don't do marketing to them,
Right.
or that doesn't mean I don't naturally like text them and say like, "Hey, how you doing? What's up?"
Yeah.
But it's not this whole, "Hey, are you looking to buy or sell a home? Do you know anybody buying or selling a home?" And I'm actually finding out the more agents that I talk to that are running high level businesses, like that's a lot of their way as well. Maybe if you're talking about like the Zillow game or the pay per click game, we've got to go more like, systematically salesy, or like, I shouldn't even say salesy, like just strategically everyday following up. But like
Yeah.
that can actually, I think, hinder relationships if that's how you're going to play it.
Yeah.
But
There's no doubt to me. Like, when I look at our business, both while Fred and I were in production ourselves and even today comes from two main places. And it's somewhat similar. It's referrals and then it's internet leads, right?
Mhm.
And with the internet leads, like, dude, it's like a pound and ground, like on the phone, text message, email, phone, text message, email, just constantly until you can engage and bring them in, right? And because it's such a long play. And then whereas with the sphere of influence, the referral sources and stuff like that's more nurturing and it doesn't need the I'm not calling you three times in a row, right? So
right.
it is a much different approach and a much different relationship
Mhm.
because one is I'm trying to get a relationship. The other one is I've got
I
one and
have
I'm
it
just
and
trying
I
to
don't want to lose
yeah, I
it.
just want to cultivate
Yeah.
it.
So like I tell some of my agents, I'm like, if you have a good referral from somebody, like talking, like calling them too much to try to grab that out of them, like that can actually hinder
It'll
that.
turn them it could turn them
Yeah, I'm
off.
like, just
Yeah.
don't go. I would rather actually lose that referral and not be that guy
Yeah.
because I know like they're gonna send me 20 more. So like I just, some of them are, they know that person better than I do, so they kind of know how to connect with them as well. So if they're not giving me their number or something and don't feel comfortable, like I'm not going to like keep that going.
Yeah. What I want to go back to today and then more just so I can refer back to
Yeah.
pre real estate. Like, did owning the skate shop, like, did that help you in your real estate business? Like,
Mhm.
because the way you talk about like not having a team, kind of being this like guy who's kind of off on his own, doing his own deal to, hey, I'm really actually, you have a team. They didn't like actually work on your team, right? Um, you think very much like a business person already. What, like, do you attribute that to the skate shop or other experiences growing up or
Yeah.
throughout the real estate career?
It's my ma. Like, my mom and my dad, just they owned, companies growing up. So, like,
Okay.
I was never, like, preach school. Like, I could come home with a D and my parents were stoked. Like,
Right.
they had no value in that to me. So, like, they were just like, "Hey, he's gotta go find his way." And so my mom, I mean, I remember reconciling my bank account at 12 years old, like, literally, like, flipping over the statement and doing the whole reconciliation, and not that I do it anymore, but, like, those principles stay with you.
Yeah.
And then at like 15, my mom's like, "Hey, like, you want to start a skate shop?" And I was a skater kid, for like 2 years before that. Like, that's all I did. And she saw the passion in it. And she's like, maybe we need to give you, like, let's buy you a skate shop. Like, you go to Cowtown and buy your stuff. Um, and now being 37 and looking back, it's like, as I tell the story to anybody who ever asked me, like, it sounds crazy. But
Right.
like, I mean, they threw down like several $100,000 to
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah, like it was, and they were making super good money and needed like probably some tax write-offs and stuff. So like, I just came from that brain of like, they owned a successful business. They wanted me to kind of be a business owner.
Right.
Instead of college, it was more like, hey,
That was
it
college.
was.
That
And
was.
what I'm thankful for is I've seen several businesses on the insides. Like, my parents owned a uber successful construction company. And then I had the skate shop that's a retail.
Right.
And then I'm in real estate. That's a little bit more of a leverage business sales position. But like, seeing all those models made me realize, like, the construction one, I'm like, whoa, like they've got like $1 million that goes out a month just in material.
Yeah.
And then the retail side, I'm going to trade shows in California, and you've got like Tony Hawk there and Rodney Mullen and Chad Muska there, all walking around. You're trying to sit down and like buy. They're coming out with new brand or new shoes for them, 7 different colorways schemes, and you're sitting there on a form, and you're like, "How many size nines do we want to buy for Christmas this year?" And I'm like, "I'm 16. Like, I don't know how many nines we're gonna sell." Like, this is before we had like algorithms.
Right.
So like, seeing that, like how much product we had to buy, um, and just like the retail space, like it just was, seeing all those businesses like made my brain just think that way. So like, from construction, then the retail side, and then the real estate side, it actually made me realize when I got into real estate, like, my mom will even still tell me this, like, you pick the business model that's like not the easiest. She wouldn't say that, but like, you picked one that can just like grow in a more organic way without so much money invested.
Yeah, well, it probably is the simplest. Like, that is, I think that's one of the beautiful things about real estate is it's not super complicated. It's simple. It requires hard
Mhm.
work. But you can have a certain level of success, maybe not to the point that you've had, but you can have a certain level of success without, like, it doesn't have to get complicated at all.
No, I think in real estate, I find more just talking to a lot of realtors is like, it's the people who just have like some form of systematic daily structure.
Yeah.
And like, cause I'm a total introvert. Like, I actually need to talk to no one in a day and be totally fine.
Yeah.
So like, I think some people think like, oh, they're super like people persons, like they would be good at real estate. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I find that the people who have some type of structure in a day or systems in place and somewhat follow them, not to the T, but like have some design of what they want to do with their life and business. Those are the ones that do well.
Yeah. Well, it's I think it's there's the people that are structured, that can flex the um that people muscle, right? The
Mhm.
way to kind of be more social. And then it's like it's also the social people that can kind of flex the, okay, I can follow a structure. Like, for me, I'm not
Mhm.
creating a structure. But if you just tell me what it is, I'm like, "Pff, I can do that. Like,
Mhm.
and because I know that I'm only really good if I do that.
Yeah.
And if you leave me on my own, like, I'm kind of a mess.
Mhm.
I kind of look like the rest of this room is what I look like if you leave me to my own devices, right? And so it's that combination. You got to be able to do it. You can't just be all people person, can't be all spreadsheets all the
Mhm.
time. There's this combination of people who can, you've got to be able to get into to both. And then when you get multiple business partners or multiple people kind of pushing, sometimes it's employees, sometimes it's partners, but like you and Brittany, or Fred and I, where you can take these different strengths and kind of put them together,
Mhm.
then something more can build, right?
Yeah.
Something even bigger.
Yeah. So the business, I mean, having the background of business in my life has been pleasant. I
Yeah,
mean, that was, I
that's
mean,
huge.
I think the most, if I had to figure out like the one thing out of that, all those experiences with the business, it would be just managing money. I think that if that's one thing my mom taught me at a young age was like, she was the total like Dave Ramsey, you know, like get out of debt. And I have a lot of leverage on the rental properties that I
Yeah.
own, but like that was just like a principle that she had with us. And so it was, hey, don't sign up for like this debt. And I just took that, so when I started actually making like good money in real estate, I felt no need. Like I lived in a 700 square foot condo
Yeah.
making like a good amount of money and I had no care in the world. Like I didn't think like I have no
You
bone in
weren't
my
like, I
no,
got
I
to
have
go get
no
the
bone in my
house.
body that
Yeah.
anyone needs to be impressed by like my stuff.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like this is an internal game that I'm trying to win, not like I'm trying to like have you see things that I have.
So tell me more about, like, are you cool if we, obviously, because I know you personally, like, I know you've put a lot of effort into building up your rental portfolio too.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
So when I bought that very first condo, I don't even know, it was probably 8 years ago. That was probably the first time I bought a place.
Okay.
Like I knew going into that, I was going like that was gonna be a rental property. Like I was like, this isn't a cool place. It really wasn't. Like it was fine. I knew going into like this is gonna be a primary now, a rental property later. And we lived in that for like 2 or 3 years longer than we should have. Um, and then from there, we just like I knew like I rented that place out, bought a place out in Desert Ridge, lived there. That was my first place that I had for a rental was my condo. And dude, I got that first like that cash flow
Yeah.
and it wasn't even a lot. And it was the day where I sat down and I was like, wait, I might trade like 15,000 of this cash flow a month over like making 90 or $100,000 personally with my time working. Like it was
Right.
the first time where I was like, it doesn't, the amount of money
It
didn't
feels different.
matter. It was
Yeah.
how much time was put in to get the money. And so we then just like, I had the condo I was renting, the primary in Desert Ridge, bought a house out in Surprise. It was like the last short sale I think ever standing. It literally like someone fell out of contract. It was like the last one out in Surprise. Bought that for like $169,000. Those were great days. Um, and then from there, it was just like, how do we figure this out? And then like how to get more. So I was listening to like Bigger Pockets, that podcast a lot. And I was
Yeah.
like, how do we like scale this up? My brain's always coming like, how do we do this faster? And it can drive myself crazy, but I still do it. And so I was like, how do we do this faster? And then we linked up with someone out of state. And last year I bought like, I think 13 or 14 houses.
Damn.
And so that was not only selling 50 personally,
But
but then
also
also buying, like we
acquiring.
were buying a house every like 6 weeks.
Wow.
And that got interesting. But that's my actual like, that's my passion is just like trying to figure out how to take the money made off of real estate, my business, parking it somewhere that makes sense, not in just like material stuff that I'm driving or own or live in. Just parking it somewhere that like gives me back a return. And that makes my heart sing.
That's your thing.
That's my thing. Yeah. So last year, like doing that as many times as like I would go to bed at night and tell my wife, I'm like, this is getting exhausting. It was so fun to know like I'm waking up tomorrow at 6. I'm gonna go show homes. And to know that it wasn't going just to, like, pay off debt and
Right.
knowing that it was, like, getting parked and, like, it's been in I mean, I have spreadsheets that, like, track this, and I'm like, "Okay, I gotta make this month so I can park it here," and I know what the ROI is on that, so I kinda have, like, an exit strategy in my head, and the exit strategy isn't to naturally, like it's not to leave real estate, it's to just keep putting myself into the job that I want to be in,
Yeah.
and so that's where I see people talk about like, "Oh, I'm gonna retire out of real estate," and I'm like, "I'm just gonna retire out of the job that I'm doing today that I actually don't wanna do." There's probably several things that I go to do today that I love, and there's several things I'm gonna do today that I don't love, but I
Yeah.
have to do it because I'm the business owner and that's my position at the
And
time.
it's got to get done.
It's gotta
Yeah.
get done. So, as I get more and more of this cash flow, it's like I'm just gonna pick and choose, not like which one makes the most money in the company, but like
Well,
which one that makes my heart sing, and as my coach will say is which one's sustainable. And
Yeah.
anymore, like we have these conversations like, Chris, is that sustainable? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, but it's not. Because
Right.
then we'll have conversations like 3 months later, and I'm like, dude, I'm so like mentally drained. And he's like, is this sustainable for a 10 year, another 10 years? And like, you've been doing it from 22 to 37, and you just went off of hustle, young, no kids, like that kind
Correct.
of. And
Yeah.
now it's getting to the point where it's like, is this really something you can just keep doing daily?
So is there like a number of properties or an amount of cash flow that you have in your mind of like, hey, when I have this much, I will I'll kind of retire into my next role on the in the business. Like, do you have like set things
I
like that?
do. Yeah. So like, I mean, to me, like if I had like 25, 30 G's coming in cash flow, and like if the houses were paid off, it's possibly what they would be bringing in.
Right.
So like it's a game where once they're paid off, they're good. But like I actually don't need the cash flow right now because the company does well.
Right.
So we might actually flip the script. We don't know. Like that's what we're talking about for next year. Is like we might just take all the cash flow that we're making off of them and just start doing the whole Dave Ramsey.
It's fun.
It's like
So
it's kind
funny.
of
Fred and
these.
I talked about that too. Like,
It,
especially it's weird to have that conversation though, considering where interest rates are.
Mhm,
They're so low, but it's like, and what if we do the snowball thing with the mortgages on the rentals?
mhm.
That would be interesting. I don't know that it's the right answer. I don't think it's not the most scalable answer, but it's something for me though. My thought, and I'd love to hear what you think, is if that's the thing that kind of gets you to where your goal is or where you want to be, then it is the right answer.
I'm willing to at any time renegotiate my thought process. So like
This
I
is why we're friends.
I look at like Dave Ramsey. Dude, I still listen to him in my car all the time. I have almost no debt in my life outside of my rental properties. So like I still listen to it. I think the guy preaches to a great crowd and he's got good principles. Kiyosaki, he's the leverage man. Like people want to go the like, hey, like let's pin them against each other and have a war. And I'm like, no, how about you just take like those principles that serve you well at that time in your life?
Yeah.
And if you're in a lot of like debt, maybe go the Dave Ramsey approach. But then when you get out of the debt, maybe you can go the leverage Kiyosaki approach.
Yeah.
And I'm just willing to, I did the Dave Ramsey when I was young. Great. Got me to where I was. Started making really good money. My debt to income ratio was awesome. So I could then go buy houses on leverage at a very low interest rate. So I went the Kiyosaki approach. And now as I've went out and bought as many as I've have, maybe now go the Dave Ramsey approach. And
Right.
one would say like, okay, well, if you take all that money and pay off all these houses, you could have bought 40 more. And I'm
Maybe.
like, figure out where you want your life to go. Like
Yeah.
I'm 37, how many years do you have on this earth? And I don't know if I need to pass away and be like, I've got 500 leverage properties. Fine if that's your goal. But if you're just trying to go out and make like 30 or 40 G's passively, you could probably just pay them off and go that direction and feel maybe a little bit more secure when you're looking at your whole model. So the wrong or right is not ever my conversation.
Yeah.
Mine's like, what are you trying to accomplish? And like, this is go that direction.
I feel like it's a wrong or right for me, right? Or wrong or right for you.
Yep.
Like, what's the thing that helps me sleep at night? What helps you sleep at night? To me, that's the key. It's not, and I agree. Like Dave Ramsey's not my favorite person on the planet. I think his advice is so solid when for getting out of debt. He's not the guy for building wealth. Like
Mhm.
maybe Kiyosaki is, but some people don't like that either. Maybe Grant Cardone is. There's a ton of different people that could be mentors or even worse gurus out there that it's more of like, hey, where am I at right
Yeah.
now and where am I trying to go? And there's going to be different answers. I think that we gotta figure out who we're going to listen to and kind of what are those steps we're going to take.
Yeah. They all serve their spot, like you said,
Yeah.
Cardone, Ramsey, Kiyosaki, like there's something about all of them that actually can irk you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But then I'm like, hey, I look in the mirror and I'm like, I'm naturally like, if someone was following me, I'm like,
Probably piss off people.
I'd probably piss off a good 15, 20% of the listen
At
just because they'd be like,
least.
I don't like that guy's style.
Oh yeah.
So I learn a lot from them just thinking like it's the goal for them is not to be loved by everybody. It's just follow your plan and they don't care. So
100%.
yeah,
Yeah. That's cool. So I what was it about the rental properties? Did you just caught the bug or what?
I just was making good money. And what else do you do with
Could
it?
only buy so many skateboards,
Yeah,
right?
there you go. I wish I could still skate. My knees won't allow me. But like, like that's like And it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound arrogant when I say it, but like we're making really good money and we have like almost no debt. So it's like I looked at interest rates being so low and I'm like, all right, well, we're just gonna park it here. And I think it's easier for me to be in real estate and buy rental properties where like when I talk to some of my clients, like, oh, it's easy for you because you already naturally do that all day. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like that is probably true. Um, but what's even better anymore is like getting like I have so many clients now that call me just because they see my Facebook journey and they're like, hey, I want to do this. And so I mean, I talk more people out of selling their home a year than probably most realtors sell a year.
Yeah.
Cause I'll look at them and be like, hey, do you have the down payment for the next house? Yep. I'll be like, hey, do you just want to like rent this? You're gonna make like $800 a month cash flow. I do the numbers for them and you're just talking yourself out of deals. But like that's the point.
Yeah,
Like
but you're doing the
do
right thing for that person.
yeah. And so like
And that's never the wrong thing.
yeah, so I'll do that with them. They're like, "So you don't wanna sell my house?" I'm like, "You keep it, let's go buy you another house." I've got 3 people I'm helping right now that call me to sell. They're keeping them, and I'm like, "That's where I wanna keep going," because I'm like, when they think of like, "Oh, I'm gonna refer you out to my friend or my mom or my grandma," they're like, "This dude's gonna, like, straight up be so honest with you. He's gonna talk himself out of a sell to tell you, like, that's the right thing to do."
That's
But, like,
awesome.
to answer your question where we got the bug was just money coming through, not really wanting it to stay in the bank. Um, I just I think it was a year ago where I told my wife, like, with the interest rates where they're at and where I thought the dollar was gonna go, which is printing off so much, I'm like, we need to figure out how to park as much of this in hard goods.
Yeah.
And that's where it came from. And I'm just naturally aggressive when I come up with an idea. And so I was trying to actually like as I was my goal was to buy one every 5 weeks last year. And I was trying to figure out at some points, I'm like, am I buying this to like hit the goal? Or like, does the numbers really make sense? Like, I'm that dude who's like gonna like buy it. And I'm like, well, I probably could have made a little bit more ROI if I'd have waited, but I'm like, nope, like I gotta buy one every
Dude, it's such a balance of like, I gotta have a goal. The goal's good because the goal to me, what's something I learned from Gary Keller years ago, and I'll credit him this forever, is the purpose of the goal is to direct the activities. It's not to get
yeah.
the goal, right? And so, because it is easy to go, well, I'm gonna like it could be easy to buy a bad deal
Mhm,
because you know you just got to buy one, right?
mhm,
Or you could, um, you maybe you're missing a deal because your goal is somewhere else.
mhm.
And so the thing about a goal is to direct activities, and we also have to keep our eyes open and go, okay, but is this actually enhancing what I really forget about the goal for a second? Is it enhancing what I'm really trying to do?
Right.
Or is this actually taken away? And that's probably a more nuanced conversation
Mhm.
and thing to have in the moment, especially with someone who's like a driver like yourself.
Yeah.
So dude, as we start to wrap up here, what is what's the thing I haven't asked you yet that I should have that we should be talking about, the other agents should be thinking about?
You know what? Probably just like how we get the 70 referrals.
Yeah.
I think that's something that people would want to know. And
So
I think that people should know how simple it can be. I think it's a byproduct of like super good customer service.
yep.
I think that's what people forget. It's like one, it's like really good customer service, like overly done, thinking of what their next steps are in the transaction and already delivering it to them where they're like, hey, I was thinking about that and you just text me. But like we do this enough, we should know like their challenges and where they lie. And
Right.
like having a system or an email or a video that goes out to them before that natural, like hey, we probably should be talking to our clients about low appraisals right now. Like
Right.
I'm already having that conversation. So like when it happens, they're like, oh my gosh, he told me.
He told me he's a genius.
There
Oh
you
my
go. Yep.
gosh. Yeah.
And so good service with them. But then I think just systematically, like with what we do, like and it's so old school. I hope that people can resonate with it because I mean, even at 22, this is what I was doing now at 37. I'm doing is the postcards once a month, like legitimately like a postcard once a month that goes out to them. It's been the same postcard, switched out houses for years. We buy them in bulk. So the same houses are on there sometimes for like 5 months. No one cares. The only time they care is if their house made the list.
No one cares.
And then they text you like, my house made the list again.
Yeah.
The postcards, the letters that go out that say, like, here's the 7 ways you can refer us business. If you hear of somebody downsizing, upside, divorce, death, with a magnet in there, New Year's cards, um, sending out our card once a year that says like, hey, 94% of our business comes from, repeat and referral business. It's people like you that keep us in business. We thank you for that. Like it's so basic of stuff that is, like I said, a byproduct of good customer service. And then second, compounded over time.
Yeah, it's just reminding
It's,
them.
but people think like, oh, well, those are kind of, I think other realtors, like I've had many that are like, hey, what do you do? And I'm like, this. And I show them, I have a folder. I go to the coffee sometimes with people and I'm like, here they are. But what do you really do? And I'm like, this for 16 years, do this.
It
But
sounds
what do you
sexy.
really do? And
Sounds
I'm like,
sexy.
that right there, the postcard, send it out. But then and I give them my print shop. I tell them, just find homes with your brokerage that you can put on there. Like, just figure this out. 2 years later, hey, Chris, can we meet to talk?
It's the
Dude,
same questions,
yeah.
right?
And I'm
And you're
like,
like, I'm still just doing
I
the
went
same
from
boring
40
thing.
to 80 to 120 to 140 by this compounding, not by some like magic pill that I like swallow and like, ooh, this is how you do it.
I'm so glad you said that word compounding. It- spe- Especially for those of us in business, like it's easy for us to think about compound interest, right? When it's money and we can see it. What I think that we tend to forget about is that compounding is everywhere, especially in business,
Mhm.
right? And in relationships. And there's this thing of like doing that, like sending that cheesy postcard every single month for 2 years, 4 years, 8 years. Dude, it's not sexy at all.
Mm-mm.
But like, you've got the perfect system. Like, you're not even calling people. Like, you call people out of necessity, not because I'm trying to generate business. And so, when you do something like that for such a long period of time, the like it's almost impossible. Like, you couldn't even avoid the transactions at this point. Like, you would trip over, I would guess, 50 transactions next year if you just stopped doing everything.
Mhm.
You would still have it would be probably inconvenient for you to deal with it because you've got this power of compounding over the last 16 years
Mhm.
that is working in your favor that no one wants to like put into.
Yeah, and like, and that's like you just said it best. Like we get so many referrals now, thankfully. I like thank God for them. And that's something that from like a P&L standpoint, I'm not willing to give up. So like that's why we went from like
Yeah.
the showing agents to now like we have the showing partners. Like I have two now, and this just started 3 months ago. It was listening to your podcast with Dave Z.
Dave.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember being at the gym. Dave Z was on your podcast. He gave his email address. I emailed him, was like, hey, I want to know more. He said, hey, let's talk. We got on the phone. He was talking to me about the showing partners. And I just went to my natural fail forward. And I was like, cool. So I put up a wise hire ad, copied Dave's. He didn't know. Boom, copied it. I got like 70 people who applied,
Damn.
put a system in place, and started doing Zoom calls with them. Found out 98% of the people just aren't employable just because they're not employable. Found two that made the cut, got them licensed. They weren't even realtors. And I have, I mean, all the homes the last 2 months that have been shown of my like clients are through them.
Dude.
And so I was just like, that's how do we keep this from a P&L standpoint profitable? Because I love the referrals and I'm so thankful
Yeah.
for them. But I'm like, you just can't, it's out of necessity. I think people like, they'll listen to a podcast and be like, I'm going to do that to get there. And I'm
Well,
like,
but you
no,
actually
it's a,
do. The difference is you actually go and do. If you say you're going to do something, you go and do it. And I think what I noticed is when you find something that, hey, if I put the work into it up front and it gives me a bigger reward later,
Mhm,
like it'll grow over time, like the postcards, like as an
mhm,
example, like that's a brilliant example. And the rental properties, you go, oh, you wreck what I don't know if that's like conscious or subconscious for you, built in from like, your upbringing. You're recognizing that. And then so like those are the things that looks like you, at least from my viewpoint, tend to go take action on.
mhm. Yeah. And the biggest thing anymore is like what I've sat down in this, and I really truly have sat down and thought of like the last 16 years in real estate. And I've noticed this, and this is what I'm going to focus on like heavy and hard for the next while is the connections that I've had with other realtors. I'm telling you that you don't know this, but like you changed the way short sales were done in my life. And so you didn't teach me necessarily how to do a short sell transaction. But I remember going to Keller Williams and Roseanne Patterson and Jen and Eric Sanchez. Like I came in, I was like 22, and they were just like, "Hey, do this," and I was like, "Wait, like they care?" I think they just saw me as like this young guy that was trying hard. I think they saw me as like their kid. They
Right.
just wanted to like help out. But like that right there, I was like, that was a connection that changed my life.
Yeah.
Like it changed my business life. And then from there, I was like, okay, I need to get better at this from a mindset aspect. Like I get the technicalities of it, but then your short sell power hour and that, the outback mentality.
Yeah.
That's like, I still tell people like, if the market switches, I'm good. I've did short sells. I'll figure it out. Like
Same.
that. So looking back on 16 years, it was Roseanne Patterson, Jen Sanchez, and Eric Sanchez, and then giving me over to Jen Link, who negotiated my short sales. I wasn't even doing them, but like that changed my business. I had realtors referring me short sales because they didn't want to do them. And I'm like, I'm just getting the paper collection, handing it to this lady and giving her a referral fee. That's fine. They don't need to figure out the business model. I did.
Yeah, it's
Then
hard.
you
It's
just
hard
you
work. It looks
you
like hard work.
you think of like how I got into the REO game through one person that I met, and then meeting you and Dave, and you start thinking, I'm like, wow, this is actually, and Frank.
Yeah.
Frank changed my life talking to him. I was in Huntington Beach, we talked on the phone, game changer. And I remember walking back, I was in Huntington Beach, walked back into the restaurant and told my wife, this is about how to like compound in a very organic way relationships with people that truly care
Yeah.
about you and where you're going. And like that's so hard for some people to think that there's a community of your quote unquote competitors that
Yeah.
want to help you. And I'm like, no, because like if somebody calls me tomorrow and says, hey Chris, like would you meet up with me for coffee? Like I don't even know how many times I've did that. And so I'm like, it's there. Like people have given it to me, I give it to other
Yeah.
people. And so now like moving forward, that's my biggest mission is like, how do I connect with people in this industry that want to grow bigger lives than I can almost even think of in business and just keep hanging out with them
That's awesome.
and just connecting with them
So
and figuring out how to provide value to them as well.
I have a question for you. Then I want to go back and talk about Frank for a second as we wrap up. So if someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way for that to happen?
This is going to sound like a 98-year-old guy, and I'm not going to give you a Yahoo, but
Is it at AOL?
you just email me at chris@soldbybowers.com.
Chris@soldbybowers.com.
If
And
you
we'll link
Facebook me
that
or
in notes.
Instagram me, like I probably wouldn't even check the message. I'm just an old soul, just sitting by my pool, like, what's this social media
He
stuff?
really is, guys. So something I want to point out, like you mentioned, Frank. The Frank he's referring to is Frank Klesitz, CEO of Viral Marketing. He's been on the show before. Hopefully, maybe we'll do it again. We had a mastermind not too long ago where Frank was out here and kind of facilitated for us, and it was I don't know. There's probably about 30 of us in the room, super high level people in the room, kind of just being really open and honest and sharing ideas. And the reality is and somebody asked Frank, like, why are you guys doing this? Why is Kevin and Fred putting this on? And the reality is, well, yeah, okay, it's a top of funnel thing, right? But it only works because we actually believe that if I share with you what works for me and you share with me what works for you, we both end up with more.
Mhm.
Like it's this coming from this place of abundance and having that mindset of we can actually help each other get better. Man, I'll never forget. I was a rookie. I hadn't even hung my license yet and I was walking through the hall at this KW office that I joined 2007 and they were doing the whole power walk thing and introducing me to some of the top agents and this one guy goes he's like can't wait for you to join, you're going to kill it, if there's anything I can do to help you sell sell real estate, say the word, there's so many homes, for there's so many deals out here like we can, and I realized like oh my god, there actually is more than enough for all of us to get our goal,
Mhm.
to do what we need. And that mentality has just stayed with me
Yeah.
the whole way.
And I think you realize like in those rooms, like as you connect to people, like you trade we're trading, our knowledge. So like
Yeah.
I had someone in the room recently reach out to me and said, hey, I want to talk to you about how to run the numbers on your rental properties. So like that was my give back to that person, was like, that's
Yeah.
that's my thing. I'm really good at like how to find a house with ROI, even in a crazy market in Arizona. So like that was you know, that's what I gave them as like my value to them. Um, but in return, they gave me some of their systems that they had. So I realized I'm like, wow, like this is from a high level, this is our currency. Our
Yeah, it
currency
is.
is literally like, that's your special sauce, that's his special sauce, I have mine, and we're trading currency. And if you can just trade currencies with people, then you know you can, if they're closing 100 units by doing that, like I can now implement that and through leverage grow that. And
Yeah.
then I can give them this and they can grow that. So like you're not even competitors or thinking from that aspect. You're thinking, I have this to offer the business world. They have this to offer the business world. We've linked up, and our partnership and our currency with each other is truly how do we help each other? And as we help each other, they're going to have better connections with other people at higher levels. And then like the train just goes. Like that's just the train I want to be on, is the high level train, and not like sitting back every day and being like, well, what are we going to do here? Like it's just not where my brain goes. So,
Dude, that's
and I don't
awesome.
think you'll ever understand like that short sell power hour. You can tell you naturally we're always a give back to the community, because I mean, I still can see you guys sitting on that couch, like short sell power hour, you know,
Every once in a while, like
going downtown and listening to the Outback Way and getting scripts on what to do. So
every once in a while, someone will like actually do that chant. Will be something. It always throws me off
yeah.
and cracks me up. Like it was a lot of fun. And yeah, no doubt, core belief of ours for sure. It's all about surrounding ourselves with other people who also want similar things. Like we don't have to want the same thing. We don't. I'm not talking about like, you know, we all think the same thing, but we all have a general direction, right? And we can all help each other get there faster.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
awesome. Chris, dude, thanks a lot for taking the time to do this today. I know you're busy and as you pointed out earlier, have a million things on your schedule today. So thanks for taking the time out to do this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. For those of you watching on the terrible video feed that we have this time, we'll see you next week on the Kevin and Fred show. Once again, Chris, if you want to reach out to Chris and talk to him, Chris at soldbybowers.com. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
All right. I nailed it. We'll put it in the notes though. All right, guys. See you next week.